Alright guys, MTech Guy here, and today we're going to be looking at carrying out a little preventative maintenance job on the little one series, the E87 130i, and of course this being a 130i, it's got the N52 engine, and the part that we're going to be looking at changing out today is very prone to failure on these engines. Alright, so which part are we looking at changing out today? Well, if we take a closer look in the engine bay here, you'll see this coolant hose here that runs across the front of the engine, where it bolts to the engine there, very close to the oil filter housing there. It's got a little plastic neck, and what can happen over time is that plastic neck will become really brittle and it'll start cracking and it can actually break away. So normally it'll just fracture across the edge of the neck there and it'll start leaking coolant, so you'll notice you have coolant on the floor and your level will be getting low in your expansion tank there. But what will happen over a long period of time, it'll just break down and come away, especially with the pressure that's in the hose. Often people find that whenever a mechanic's been working on the car in this area, especially if been changing out the oil filter housing gasket, sometimes this hose gets lent on and that's when the crack will start. But nonetheless, it will start over time anyway because they do become very brittle. Now, one solution to prevent this happening in the future is there are companies out there that make a little aluminium replacement, so you can just change out that aluminium portion there, remove the old plastic one, fit the new aluminium one and just connect your hose back up. But the part I've got today, it all comes as one unit. It's got the aluminium flange on the end, the neck, and then it's got a brand new hose, and if we follow that right down there, that just bolts to the thermostat down the bottom there. So I'm taking this as a good opportunity to fit a new hose also, because this car's 15 years old now, so hey, why not, eh? And of course, with the aluminium neck there, there's no chance of it cracking, fracturing or breaking away in the future, so it's a really good solution. Alright, so let's take a look at the parts that we're going to need to get the job done. Alright, so let's take a look at what we've got here. So I've got the new hose unit here, and I've gone for the Rain brand, which comes complete with the aluminium fitting on the end of it, that neck. Now what happens with the old plastic ones, over time they can crack here and start leaking, just where the neck is, where the hose clamps on, and also where this O-ring is, where it sits inside of your engine. This can become so brittle it'll just start crumbling away, and that can end up inside your engine, which is no good. So it's certainly a good opportunity to go for an aluminium one. It's going to last a lot longer and it's not going to present you with them same issues. Now this hose is often known as the oil filter housing hose just because of its location in the engine bay, but it's also known as the Mickey Mouse hose. If we take a closer look, it's pretty obvious why. So like I say, there are companies out there that make the aluminium fitting just on its own, so you can just remove the old hose from the plastic fitting, remove the plastic fitting, fit your new aluminium one, and then just reclamp your existing hose back onto that. But I'm going to change the whole lot out today, just because, like I say, it's 15 years old and I want to change it out for a new one, so it will mean that we'll have to drain the entire cooling system. So when we pull that off the thermostat, it's going to dump all the coolant anyhow, so we're going to drain the whole lot. But if you are just changing the fitting itself, then you don't really need to drain the whole lot. You can just remove this. You'll end up losing a little bit of coolant, just top it up at the end. But because I'll be draining all of the coolant, I've also got some genuine BMW coolant and some distilled water to top it up. So we're going to mix this 50-50, and the coolant capacity of these cars is approximately 8.2 litres, so you'll need to buy enough to mix it 50-50 to make up the full capacity. Alright, so let's take a look at the steps required to get the job done. Alright, so to be able to access the hose in question, we've got to remove this intake section here and also the plastic cover that sits on your oil cooler. So to start off with, we're going to remove these 4 screws here, and they take a T20 Torx bit. And now we can remove the plastic air intake. And then next up we can remove the oil cooler plastic cover here, that just clips off. Now we've got a bit more access to the flange that's bolted to the engine there. So next up we'll just unclip this plastic clip here. So now that we've got access from the top, we next need to drain the coolant and then disconnect the hose from the thermostat. So to be able to do that, we need to first jack up the front end of the car. Alright, so to be able to gain access to the hose that's clamped to the thermostat, we next need to remove this plastic under tray, and it's held on by a number of screws, all of which take an 8mm socket. Alright, so now that we've got the main plastic under tray out of the way, next up we can remove this additional plastic under tray at the front here, and that'll give us access to the radiator drain plug. So to be able to remove this, it's just another 2 bolts that take an 8mm socket, and we'll remove these brackets at the same time also. So if we take a look over on the left hand side of the radiator here, you can see our blue drain plug, so we can now position our drain pan underneath, and using a large flat blade screwdriver we can remove the drain plug and let that coolant drain. And to help that drain a bit easier, we'll remove the expansion tank cap. So now that we've got the coolant drain from the radiator, I've got the drain plug refitted now. Okay, so if we follow our hose from the front of the engine here, follow it right down to the thermostat, you can see just down there, we've got a hose clamping it to the thermostat, and to be able to remove that, we're going to have to use a screwdriver from underneath, and then we'll remove the hose from the top here. And looking from underneath, there's our hose right there. And that's the clamp, so we're going to get a screwdriver through this small gap here to undo the clamp, and then we're going to stick our hand down from the top so we can actually get at it and then remove the hose like that. And do expect a bit of coolant to come out of there when you do remove it. Okay, so back up in the engine bay here, we can now remove the 2 mounting bolts that are holding this flange to the engine. These take a 10mm socket. And now we can remove the hose away from the engine. Just be careful not to break that old plastic neck. We'll just pop it out the clip down here, slide it out. Just give this opening a little bit of a clean before we fit the new hose. Alright, so we'll feed the new hose back into the engine bay. And what I'm going to do before I fit the new flange here is just put a bit of coolant around the O-ring there just to lubricate it a wee bit. Now we can refit it. Be a tight fit. There we go. Get the bolts back in there. Tighten them up. There we go. I'll push this back in the clips here, and then we can go down the bottom side and refit it onto the thermostat. Okay, so that's our hose back in position now on the thermostat, and the clamps retightened. Alright, so that's the new hose now in position. Now before we get carried away refitting the air intake and the plastic cover for the oil cooler, we're going to refill the cooling system, then we're going to bleed it, then we're going to run the engine up to temperature, get that coolant nice and hot, get some pressure in the system, and then we'll just check both ends of the hose for any leaks, and then we'll piece everything back together. Alright, so before we start refilling the cooling system with our 50-50 mix, we're just going to remove the bleed screw here. And what that'll do is that'll bleed any air to the top of the system as we're filling it. And we're just going to carry on filling the system until we see some coolant exit the bleed hole there, and then we know that it's full. There we go. So now we're fully level at the bleed hole there, so I'll reinsert our plug. Cap back on. Alright, so to be able to bleed the system, we're going to jump in the car here. We're going to put the ignition to position 1. We're not going to start the car. And we're going to turn the fan speed on the lowest setting and the temperature to the highest setting. And if we press and hold down the accelerator pedal for 10 seconds, what that'll do is it'll start the electric water pump and that'll start self-bleeding the system. And if we come round into the engine bay here and have a listen, you can hear it doing its thing. You can hear them bubbles coming up to the expansion tank there. So this process takes approximately 12 minutes, so we'll just wait for that to do its thing. Alright, so now that's finished doing its thing, we'll just check the level. Perfect. So now we'll start the engine up and let it warm up. Okay, so I've let the engine run for a number of minutes before shutting it off now. The system's fully up to temperature, so we'll just check these hose connections now. It's looking pretty good, no leaks there. Check this from the top side, can't see any leaks there. We'll just check it from underneath. It's looking pretty good. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So now we can move on to refitting the oil cooler plastic cover and the air intake ducting. Screws back in. Alright, so that's that done. Now just one other thing to think about. Once the engine's cooled down, it is worth rechecking your coolant level. You may find you have to top it up just a tiny bit. But other than that, we're all done. Alright guys, so there we have it. That's how you go about changing out that troublesome Mickey Mouse hose on your E87 130i with the N52 engine, so we don't have to worry about that problem part anymore. Now if you found the video interesting or useful, don't forget to give it a like and make sure you go and check out the rest of my YouTube channel for more BMW E87 130i content. Consider subscribing if that's your cup of tea. I'm MTech Guy, thanks a lot for watching.